he's passionate about something, he's like a dog with a bone, and he's just like, this is how I feel, and I've got the facts to back it up in my opinion, and I'm gonna like make sure that I persuade you into my opinion.
Mergers, AI spending, and Bill Ackman. Welcome back to Fortune Daily, and here's what I'm thinking about today. So, a federal judge just put a firm date on when we can expect an answer to the biggest will they, won't they question in Hollywood. And don't worry, it's not anytime soon. A March 2027 trial has been set for the big antitrust challenges to Paramount's acquisition of Warner Bros. Discovery. It's yet another setback for Paramount, which had hoped to close the merger this very summer. But in mid-July, a coalition of state attorneys general and the Writers Guild of America filed lawsuits to stop the deal in its tracks. A judge issued a temporary restraining order and yesterday set the trial date for March 2nd. So that timeline guarantees at least 7 more months of limbo and headlines, adding strain for both companies and the financiers backing the $110+ billion deal. Because this delay comes with a very real price tag. Under the merger agreement, Paramount must pay Warner shareholders about $7 million for every single day after September the 30th that the deal has not closed. That is a hefty amount of cash. A March trial date means Paramount will owe well over $1 billion in ticking fees before the judge rules. So, of course, there could always be a settlement before then, but there's no sign right now of any negotiating taking place. Looking past the immediate corporate intrigue of this story, this battle is ultimately about who controls the pipes of culture. If these two media heavyweights join forces, one single company will own a huge chunk of the movies, of the shows, of the sports, and the news that most of us watch. That changes how much you pay for streaming, it changes how many choices you have between apps, and importantly, it also changes how many buyers creative workers can sell to. It's also a test case because if it goes ahead, it sends a very clear signal that very large media mergers are fair game in a world where Netflix and Amazon and Apple are already giants. If it doesn't, it's a warning shot for the next wave of consolidation. Now it's time to dive into the data with today's big number. An analysis of this data is done in collaboration with the Ramp Economics Lab. And you should be sitting down for this one because it's pretty big. So today's big number is $4,883.33. That's how much the top 1% of AI spending companies shell out every month per employee. For contrast, the average business is spending just $10.66. That's the price of, say, a basic seat license on a shared enterprise subscription. The top 1% are dropping 400 times more than that. Ramp's AI index measures actual corporate spending using actual payment data, and it captures a snapshot of how intensely the most advanced AI adopters are spending, effectively how much they're betting on each employee per month. In a second, I'll be chatting to my colleague Emily Follini to dig deeper into today's big number. The big number is powered by Ramp, a finance platform built to get other companies to spend less. The median company on Ramp cuts expenses 5% and grows revenue 16% in its first year alone. Learn more at ramp.com. So now I'm here with Emily Follini, senior AI reporter, to dig a bit deeper into that big number. So Emily, we've got some companies that are spending upwards of $4,000 per month per employee on AI, and we've got others who are spending $10. That's a huge gap. does it actually matter? Is the size of spend significant to a company's productivity?
I think what we're seeing is that companies don't know how to measure that. So there has been a backlash against these really hefty AI bills. So now if you've noticed, the headlines are talking about what's the ROI? Is more AI mean more products, more money, more revenue? And I think the consensus is it speeds up the work and more gets done, but it's unclear if that's actually making more money. So they don't know if it's worth it. So that's where you're seeing some of the pullback. And we saw last week OpenAI slashed costs on their recent model. And so they're trying to make it cheaper.
What does, on a concrete level, a $4,800 per month spend look like?
I think it's probably in the engineering department. So
Okay.
they give them access to the APIs for these different AI models. And so they're just cranking away at their computer using what's called tokens, which is kind of like currency in this world. And so they're just sending a lot of requests in, and it's using a lot of compute power. And so they're racking up really big bills. But then there's also just subscriptions. It's probably anywhere from $20 to $200 per person, and so that's the combination of costs.
And I'm sure the question on everyone's lips is, what would you spend $4,800 on this month if you had that kicking around?
Probably wouldn't be up all night using AI. I'd probably go on a good vacation and get away from AI.
I think that's a very good call. Emily, thank you for joining us.
Pershing Square founder and CEO Bill Ackman is as outspoken as he is ambitious. He sat down with Fortune Editor-in-Chief Alyson Shontell to talk about big bets and his polarizing playbook.
Alyson, thank you for joining us. So you recently went to Bill Ackman's very beautiful office in Manhattan to interview him. How do you prepare for an interview with someone as direct and opinionated as Bill Ackman?
I do a ton of research. My goal is to try and understand how he thinks, how he'll answer questions, and to be as informed about him as I possibly can so we don't waste time in the interview. He's got a big job. I've got a big job. Nobody wants to waste their time. So I spend a ton of time prepping so that the conversation is fun, it flows. I feel prepared. I kind of know how he might answer things, and I kind of know what will be something he enjoys talking about and something where I'm going to have to press a little bit more. So it's a lot of research.
And you spoke to him about office culture at Pershing Square, which I thought was really interesting. Let's watch a clip, and then I've got a follow-up question.
How are you building the culture of the firm to pick these bets?
Sure. So first of all, I'm a big in the office believer. So it's actually 5 days a week, 10 months of the year. The summer, actually, the investment team all co-locates. The investment team's all in an office out east, as they say, in Bridgehampton. But the rest of the firm, you have a choice. You can come into the office, or you can work from home, unless there's something really important going on where we need to bring everyone in. I guess so. Yes.
First of all, do you have any plans to co-locate Fortune to the beach in the summer? Because I think we'd all be very keen.
I think that would be awesome. I think we should push for that hard. I will bring it up in the next SLT meeting.
Please do, and I'm going to hold you to it. So his approach, it seems quite unique. You speak to a lot of leaders the whole time. This sort of co-locating for 2 months of the year, is that something you've ever heard before? Kind of what does it say about him as a leader? I
haven't heard about typical co-locating, but everybody's return to office plan is a little bit different. But in general, the executives we're talking to are very pro 5 days a week. So that doesn't surprise me to hear. But what I think is pretty genius about the plan is, like, if you or I had the summers to be fully remote, it would feel a lot better to be in the office. We're 4 days a week in the office right now, going on 5 probably. Would feel great if it was the summer that we were flexed for. So I think it's a really smart plan, and his employees seem to like it.
It buys a lot of goodwill. Yeah. Give me a sense what else you felt about Bill as a leader, or any insights you got from your time with him.
Yeah, I think he is a big believer that capitalism can solve most problems, and one of the biggest problems we have in America is that just not enough people are participating in it, in the stock market in particular. So he's very focused on helping come up with policies and using his large 2.7 million followers to activate on Twitter around this topic. He sees Mamdani coming into New York and kind of a more socialist agenda as the affordability gap gets really insane. And he's not pro that. He thinks capitalism can solve a lot of problems. So even at his own firm, he told me they recently had 2 public offerings at Pershing Square,
Yeah.
and he told me that every employee, there's only 48 of them, but that every employee now owns the equivalent of millions of dollars worth of shares, from the front desk people to the dozen or so partners that he works with to actually pick the investments they do.
Wow. So they're doing pretty well. If you're working for Bill, you're doing okay.
Yeah, look, a hedge fund life, there's a reason the office is so gorgeous. It's a little bit different than media. I'd love that to be our office someday, but a ways to go.
And did you get a sense from him about how he decides which topics to weigh in on X? Because Ackman is very vocal. He writes these actually very articulate essays quite frequently. How does he choose when he's going to speak out?
Well, first off, I think he's actually a really good writer.
He is.
And as you and I know, that is a skill that a lot of people don't have, and it's a very powerful skill. It's why we have our jobs. It's why he has 2.7 million followers. He's not just thinking something, he can articulate it in a way that people can grasp onto, whether they love it or they hate it. He's not afraid to be polarizing. One of the things I thought was really funny when I was researching him was, even from a young age, he clearly was very verbose. He had a friend in his yearbook in high school write, "A closed mouth gathers no foot." And so, like, even then, clearly he was an outspoken guy, very self-confident, assured of himself. And so I think, but he also does his homework and he does a ton of research. And when he's passionate about something, he's like a dog with a bone. And he's just like, this is how I feel, and I've got the facts to back it up in my opinion, and I'm gonna make sure that I persuade you into my opinion. But he also wants to be challenged. It's something he said he expects of all of his CEOs he works with at the companies he's investing in, or when he's sitting on a board, or even his own board or his own employees. He's like, I want them to fight back. I want them to give me a smart argument as to why I'm wrong, and I'm happy to listen. But he thinks that speaking truth and arguing is actually a really healthy thing for society. So he likes to kind of roll up his sleeves and fight.
Let's talk about setbacks for a second. So you talked to him about the mammoth and unsecured personal loan that he took out from JP Morgan in the mid-2010s, I think, to stabilize Pershing Square at a time when it was under a lot of pressure as a fund. Let's take a look at the clip.
We had basically $4 billion in Pershing Square holdings, even at the bottom being down 30 or so %. And I said, look, if all of the investor capital leaves and our open-ended funds, now we have permanent capital. We'll have 100% permanent capital. It's a much better base to build a building off of. So I brought all the employees together and I said, look, it's not permanent capital simply because it's a public company. It's permanent capital only when you own enough of the stock. So this was the time where I decided to borrow some money, which I did.
Quite a bit.
I borrowed $300 million.
It was the biggest personal unsecured loan ever granted to an individual by JP Morgan.
I believe that's the case. And I used that plus some capital I took out of the hedge fund to buy enough of a stake of our public vehicle so that it became permanent capital. And then I called all the employees together and I said, we are better positioned today than at any time in our history. We have the holy grail. We have permanent capital. All we need to do is stick to our core principles, work hard, and we're going to compound our way out of this mess. And then we also have to treat all our investors fairly. Everyone wants their money, can have their money.
And did you really believe that? Did you believe?
100% believe that. And it was true.
The thought of taking out a $300 million loan gives me heart palpitations.
I think for him too.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. He's talking about it very calmly now with the benefit of hindsight. How do you think he would have he approached that in the moment? What sense did you get about how he approached his failure, setbacks?
Oh, I think it was dark. So one of the things in prepping for this interview that I did was listen to every recent, in the last few years, interview with Bill I could get my hands on. And one was he did a 3-hour podcast with Lex Friedman that I listened to twice. And he talks about this pretty in depth and much more raw than I got him to do in this hour. But really he was saying like, he's going through divorce. At the start of it, he was weighing a divorce, and then he started going through divorce. So he was living in a different place from his kids. His firm was getting squeezed by Carl Icahn, which he didn't mention in this clip, but I got him to talk about a little bit later. They had kind of like a heated rivalry, and this is a bit of a vendetta, and Carl really found a good position to pounce, make some money, and make him really sweat. And I think it was really, really hard. And he talks about, I didn't want to go down that way. And he, I guess, had never defaulted on anything, and he was able to finagle this huge lifeline from JP Morgan. I really don't know where he would be if that hadn't solidified. I don't think he knows where he'd be if that didn't solidify. But he was telling Lex Friedman in their interview, like, I was fearing I was going to lose all my money. I'm going through this divorce. That's going to take all my money, like that I don't have. I'm going to have to fire all these people. Like I'm going to be a total failure, and like maybe a judge will find something to blame me on, and I'll go to jail. He was really spiraling. So I think it was incredibly dark. And he talks about, in the interview that I did with him as well, just make a little bit of progress at a time. Like just put one foot in front of the other. It's like climbing a mountain, and then suddenly you can find, eventually you'll look back and that you've dug yourself out. But I think it was very much one foot in front of the other.
Some takeaways from this conversation. So if I'm an investor watching your conversation with Bill Ackman, what can I learn about investing in the age of AI in particular?
So we talked about some of these trillion-dollar IPOs that have happened or are happening, namely SpaceX, Anthropic, OpenAI. He's recently invested in a few tech stocks. His firm only does about a dozen investments that they really put their weight behind. And recently he took money out of Alphabet, which I thought was interesting, but put it into Uber, into Meta, I think into Microsoft, into a couple. And he really feels like Anthropic is, from his vantage point, the fastest revenue growth he's ever seen.
Wow.
And also on track to be very well off financially comparatively to OpenAI, which the economic model doesn't quite work. And even I met with the founder of OpenAI 2 weeks ago, Greg Brockman, and I asked him about the OpenAI business model, like what is the plan? And there wasn't a really articulate thing there. It was like the promise of it can be really big, but it's not yet realized. And I don't think that's going to hold up well in a roadshow. I think that's going to be a little bit scary for investors if they are going public later this year. And Bill seemed to be a bit skeptical of, with no inside knowledge, just from his vantage point of the economic model of OpenAI right now, more bullish on Anthropic. But all of it, I think he thinks this is a really significant moment, and it's not to be ignored. Yeah.
Your vodcast is called Titans and Disruptors of Industry. As our editor-in-chief, what constitutes or who constitutes a titan in your book?
Yeah, so we come out with a franchise called the Most Powerful People List. As you know, you are overseeing our Most Powerful Women franchise, which we've been doing for almost 30 years. But really, I look at like who are the most powerful figures, who are the most influential, who has a reach beyond their own organization and into the outside world. And you cannot deny that Bill has that. Plus, he's built a huge, incredible firm. He's a Wall Street titan, no doubt. It's worth $8 billion. So he's influential. He uses his platform to be even more influential. I think by every point he would count as a titan.
Alyson, thank you so much. It was a great interview with Bill.
Thank you.
So finally, a new era of glamorous travel is about to take off. Fortune's tech editor, Alexei Oreskovic, gives us the details on a new category of civil aircraft. This is the business of luxury.
So what we're talking about here they call them eVTOL. They're all electric, first of all, 6 to 12 rotors on them, sort of like those drones. They take off and land vertically like a helicopter. 4 or 5 people can fit inside them. Some people have called them flying cars, but that's not really like an accurate description. They're not meant to operate like cars. Obviously, these are completely novel aircraft. The FAA hasn't certified a new type of aircraft since the 1940s, so it's going to be natural that a lot of people are going to look at these things and be like, whoa, like this thing is really funky looking. I'm not getting in this thing. And if you talk to proponents of these aircrafts, what they say is that they could be safer than a lot of the traditional helicopters, for instance. So there's a few companies already doing this or working on the technology. Some of them have been working on it for 10 years or more now. Joby Aviation is one. Another company called Beta, Archer Aviation is another, or their hope is to launch commercial service by the summer of 2028, time it with the Summer Olympics that are happening in LA. Several of them are actually public companies. They're actually already trading. They've gone public in recent years. Market caps in the $8 to $15 billion. Often still founder-led companies. So even though they are public companies, they look a lot like startups. And when they launch, some of them may coordinate with some of those services like Delta, United. So you might see branded air taxi services through those traditional airlines as well. The idea is that by doing more and more of these, they'll be able to make it much more accessible to the general public. Initially, I think when they launched like the helicopter service, people thought of it as like, oh yeah, that's for rich people to go like to the Hamptons or something like that. And I think it probably started that way. But now, if you look at the price that the Blade helicopter service is, it's only $195 to go from Manhattan to the airport, which is way less than probably a lot of people would imagine to take a helicopter ride. And I think the goal when this eVTOL air taxi market really takes off is going to be similar to get as many of these flights going as possible, thereby bring down the price and make it more affordable for a lot of people.
That's it for Fortune Daily. I'm Ellie Austin. I'll see you tomorrow.